Sorry about the delay there, everyone. We had some technical difficulties to overcome, as you'll do, but welcome. Very excited to have you all here today. My name is Ian Fullenwider. I work in the Alumni Engagement Office on behalf of myself and Krista Knott, my boss. Welcome again. We're really excited to have you here talk about Conundrum Escape Rooms with the founders and owners, Hanna and Chris, both alumni, shockingly. Chris is from St. Louis, Missouri, moved to Durango in 2010, got a degree in mathematics, graduated in 2013. He met Hanna at Fort Lewis College when Hanna knocked on his door and was looking for packages that had been misdelivered, some meet cute. Hanna graduated in 2015 with a degree in interdisciplinary studies and a focus in elementary education. They fell in love, got married in 2015. Great year for Hanna, graduation and marriage. And then they did their first escape room in October of that year, and they opened Conundrum Escape Rooms in June of 2016. So we'll talk a little bit more about that story, some of the wins and challenges of business ownership and entrepreneurship in Durango. And then I heard we might get some sort of a sneak peek or tour of Conundrum Escape Rooms, but I'll go ahead and turn it over to Hanna and Chris now. So thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks, Ian. Yeah, so Chris and I meeting actually was a pretty unique little meet cute. Legitimately, I did go knock on the door of his apartment looking for packages that were supposed to be delivered to my apartment, and the packages weren't there, but we hung out the rest of that day, and we just kind of never stopped hanging out, did we?
Yep.
So I also wanted to say it looks like we've got a couple people watching who are friends of ours that we know, so it's really awesome that you all are here. Rob, Mitchell, Jenna, it's good to see you all. And for everybody else that's on there, thanks for joining. So we are going to go over just a couple different things about Conundrum. We wanted to start with our origin story and sort of how we wound up in this very unique industry that is pretty special, and there's nothing else like it in Durango. And then we had a few other things we wanted to share with you all. We've got some fun photos. Chris even put together a video for us to watch, so hopefully we can make everything work. If anyone has questions for us, we do have the chat window open on our side, so you're more than welcome to shoot us any questions you might have about the business or the rooms. And then finally, the cherry on top will be ending with a sneak peek of the newest room we're getting ready to open, the Steampunk Express. Do you want to take off about the origin story?
Sure. So the first time we did an escape room was also about as unique as when we met. Hanna got off work. She was working at the library at the time. I went to go pick her up, and instead of turning right to go home, I turned left and drove to Boulder, Colorado, which for those of you not familiar with the Colorado geography, it's about 8 hours away. We met up with some friends that were up there, and we're kind of hanging out with them. And then on a Sunday, my friend Ryan was like, hey, we got to go do this puzzle room. I've heard about these things. We didn't know at all what it was. I was trying to figure out why I might want to be locked into a room to do a jigsaw puzzle with one of my close friends. But we took a chance, we decided to commit, and we had one of the most engaging experiences we've ever had with our friends, with each other. We were talking about it for hours. We didn't escape. We failed. I think if we had like a few more minutes left, we would have actually gotten out. And we just realized there was a lot of value in having that engaging experience for an hour with each other, with our close friends. Alcohol wasn't involved, nothing against a good bar, but we realized that there was a lot of value we could bring to the Durango community.
Yeah, we loved the idea of escape rooms too. So I had a really unique opportunity growing up in my childhood, which was I grew up in an extremely small town, and I kind of just had run of the town with my friends doing whatever we want, which included a lot of make-believe. So there was an element of escape rooms that almost made me feel like being a kid again, and that made me very excited. And I thought, you know, Durango, with as much as it loves adventures, plus we've got a ton of families here, there's not a lot of activities that families can do together that brings back the creativity and imaginary play that we experienced as kids. So that was another big thing for me that really appealed.
Yeah, and it's all those things, especially with having like an indoor option to do those things. Because I mean, Durango, it's like a playground for adults, for mountain biking and everything. But having those indoor options was, I think, really key to balancing out what was going on in the area.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we want to cover any? Well, so that's how we did our first escape room. We did not escape, as Chris said. I immediately loved the idea. All of us ended up hanging out at our friend's house the rest of the evening, and I was fiercely searching on my phone anything I could find out about the escape room industry, and even had come up with pretty much a very rough draft of a potential financial plan for us opening one and what it might lead to.
I think if we were in a business school and we had turned that in as a financial plan, we would have failed the class. Like, it was pretty bad. But it was focused and driven enough to realize that there was some value there. So to be honest, Hannah was very focused on opening the business, more so than I was. But she kept being persistent about it over a couple weeks later about we're doing this. And I was like, all right, well, write me a better business plan, like convince me to do it. And then she did convince me. And that's when we really started to look around for properties and start to get serious about trying to identify how you're going to get financing. Neither of us, as Ian mentioned in the introduction, were business majors. So a lot of that was a lot of self-learning. Luckily, we both came from an education background. So prior to me just graduating with just mathematics, I was focused on mathematics education, and she was focused on elementary education. So we had a lot of the drive and understanding of where to find our different resources and what to look for. And I think that was pretty key in helping us figure out what we needed. Mm-hmm. But once we started to get settling into figuring out like how we were going to source our first escape room, which in the end we did source a plan or a schematic from another business. But when we went to implement it, we changed maybe 70% of the schematic. And that's when Hannah really realized that she could give it a go, making her own rooms completely from scratch. And since that time, we really haven't looked back on any other schematics. And in fact, we've been designing schematics and selling other escape rooms for other businesses in the industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it turns out I have a knack for designing escape rooms. I get the question all the time. How on earth do you do this? Is there a format? Do you, is someone doing this for you and you just build it out? And we come up with everything. So I do all of the construction, the puzzle design, the building, the electrical, as long as it's under 12 volts or under. And it's been a really cool adventure. In fact, we are seeing a really phenomenal transition in our rooms right now. The last several rooms we've produced in terms of their not just puzzle quality, but interior design quality has been exceptional. And you'll see a little bit of that in the video Chris put together. So one of the other things that we said we were going to talk about is just to get it over with, because everybody's tired of hearing about it, we are going to touch briefly on our experience right now with COVID.
Yeah.
Let's get that out of the way.
Go ahead.
Okay. So COVID-19 has been really interesting for us as a business. We closed on March 17th, and it was an unfortunate thing that we had to do, but we wanted to make sure that we were protecting our employees as well as our guests, and we anticipated the state of Colorado was going to do kind of a stay-at-home order. So we actually closed just right about the same time as the stay-at-home order came out. We are still currently closed to the public, though myself and 2 other employees are working full-time right now at the business to build a new room, which has, in a weird way, been like the best process for building a new room thus far, because we have free run of the place. We're not working amongst groups and trying to hide the construction and keep it a big secret. We just kind of get the whole place to take advantage of. And the new room is coming along really, really well. For those of you that don't know, we also have a full workshop on site. And this is really beneficial for us for a couple of reasons. The first one being that we can completely build a new room on site. The second one being is we are able to do repairs and maintenance for our escape games at a much quicker and more solid aspect than a lot of escape rooms can do those things in, just because they don't have the luxury of having a workshop on site. So we love that, and we've, knock on wood, never had to close a room because something was damaged so badly that we couldn't repair it or fix it by the time the next group came. So that's really cool. We anticipate being open by next weekend. We're just making sure that we have all of our ducks in a row, that all of the departments that we need to speak to are on board with how we're going to go about being open. We are drastically reducing the number of groups that we can have in here in a single day, but we are going to open up again for the 2 existing rooms, which are Lost Temple and Medieval. And then if in a couple weeks or so, the new room, the Steampunk Express, should be opening up as well.
You said something interesting there that I'd like to touch on.
Go.
In regards to breakages in an escape room. So I think some business owners, or even potential business owners, if they heard that some things in their business would be broken by their patrons, sometimes repeatedly, they might shy away from that. But I think our approach with that has really become that as game designers, we need to make something that's more robust, because in an escape room, you're encouraged to go through and find as much as you can and look through stuff and pull cabinets and move things around or move dressers around. So if you don't want something to move around, you really, really need to make sure that it's adhered to something. And some people like to be a little bit more enthusiastic when they try to move stuff. So that's kind of where these breakages come from. But when we build a room, when we look at those businesses or those escape rooms as the product that we're providing for the community, we take those into consideration and typically have like backstock of different props or temporary fixes that we would be able to implement so that the game design and game flow works seamlessly. Yeah.
So we actually had an attendee that's watching the webinar today submit a question to us a couple of days ago that Krista and Ian emailed to me. And that question is, are we going to be designing any rooms that are not less puzzle focused, but very strongly storyline focused, in the aspect that you don't just get a story before you enter the room and then the room maybe does or does not follow that story super closely. And I wanted to touch on that. The 2 rooms that we have open right now, Lost Temple and the Medieval Breakout, are pretty story focused rooms, but the Steampunk Express that we're getting ready to open is going to be even more so. We're definitely trying to be creative and make sure that if you've done a lot of our rooms before, this room is going to feel pretty different in terms of how the story takes you through the game and the puzzles that you're going to encounter in the game as well. And that's been a big part for us with every room design. I'm always trying to outdo myself from the previous room. And hopefully you've seen very few things that are repeated from room to room. And if they have been repeated, it's typically because it's a prop that we've pretty much decided always has to be in one of the rooms. And that's kind of like an inside. Yeah, it's an inside joke of the business. It's a small thing that you have to do. Sometimes it's even a red herring, but it's almost always in there.
You know, that question's kind of cool too, and I think it touches on an interesting part that I won't dive too far into. But as far as the history with escape room goes, the evolution of escape rooms can kind of be traced back to the point and click things in games. Like one of the original ones was Myst or Riven, if you guys ever played that video game. They were back in the 90s and they were pretty cool. And from there, 2 types of escape rooms really evolved, and I guess a third type that blends the 2 together. One is very puzzle-based and one is very observational-based. So the puzzle-based ones are exactly what they sound. You have to be intelligent enough to figure out a puzzle without additional clues to be able to move to the next step of whatever that game flow is. Whereas the observational ones If you look hard enough in the rooms, you will find clues or hints that tell you how to do the puzzles or show you how to do the puzzles or give you a key to complete those. Our rooms definitely lean more on the side of the observational, but we do throw in some gems occasionally too, like in our Jesse James room that's supposed to take place in like a Civil War period or post-Civil War. We actually used a Confederate cipher that would have been actually used in the Civil War, and put our own little tweaks to it so that it was part of the game. But you didn't have to know any part of that history in order to find the clues in that game to help you do that cipher.
I have definitely noticed that my style typically involves historical type rooms or rooms that I can reference to things. For example, our Lost Temple room may or may not be based on Indiana Jones and some loosely based things. But there are definitely aspects of that room that if you're very familiar with that series, you're going to get really excited about, because it is some of those booby traps that you come across in the movies and you actually get to interact with them. And that's really fun for people. The Jesse James one was a great example. Another example, when we had our Speakeasy of Al Capone room, I spent hours researching Al Capone and really figured out what would it be about Al Capone and his history that would make an exciting escape room. And that's how we ended up with the storyline of it was shortly after the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which Bugs Malone was essentially the other gang that was impacted, and everybody sort of suspected that Al Capone set up that massacre, and they don't know for sure, but you as the players were sent to Al Capone's speakeasy to steal some of Al Capone's most prized possessions to get back at him. So really trying to think about not just the storyline and gameplay of the room, but in a way make it historical so it's even more relevant. Should we go through the little slideshow of photos that I put together?
Sure.
Okay.
So are these the before photos?
Yeah, so I created a nice little slideshow. Well, let's see, we're gonna have to share my screen. Hold on one second, everyone.
While she's pulling that up, I'll give a little background. So this is kind of back to the original startup story for when we started Conundrum and what we did. So once we figured a business plan and had started looking around for funding, one of the things that we really needed to figure out was where our business was going to be. We had ideas that we wanted to be relatively centrally located to downtown Durango. Again, for those familiar with Durango, it's a pretty good area for commerce and tourism. So we knew we wanted to be close there. But we were looking around. We ended up finding our current location through some clever sleuthing that Hanna did and figuring out who the owner was. And the place was an absolute dump when we found it. There was insulation hanging from the ceiling and all kinds of stuff. And I think that's kind of where we're going to start showing here in a sec.
If we can, Ian and Krista, it looks like we are host disabled participant screen sharing. Is there any way around that? We'll give them a second to see.
Yeah, I can just.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
While we're adjusting that, does anybody have any questions they want to throw up in the chat so far? Or better question from us, out of everybody watching, can you tell us how many rooms at Conundrum Escape Rooms you've done?
There you go.
There we go.
You've got it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So this is the little presentation I put together. All right, so just some fun little photos. Okay, so this is a perfect example of what Chris means by the location where our business is at was pretty run down when we found it. There was, this is actually cleaner than the first time we even saw it.
Yeah, when we first saw it, there was like a bathtub in the middle of the place.
Right here, and where that
was really
insulation is in the corner.
scummy, and insulation was everywhere. There was they were originally looking at the place to potentially put a restaurant down here, but because it's such an old and historic building, the ceiling heights were short, so they were going to have to do a lot of excavation down to make the ceiling height meet for code for the amount of people they wanted in here. So there were a bunch of like core samples pulled out of the concrete and just holes through everything. Yeah, it was.
It's actually this brick wall right behind me that was the selling point for me, that this was the space. We were actually looking at another space for the business in Durango, and it was ready to go. It was pristine and beautiful. We didn't have to put in a bunch of renovation, and this brick wall, I could see the letters for Conundrum Escape Room in my head, and I just knew that this was the space. So this is what we started off with. And the majority of the work was done by Chris and I ourselves. We also had an incredible architect who's now a really good friend of ours. He helped a ton with coordinating a lot of different work for us. And then here is some after photos. So there's our entrance, which looks a lot better, and then the retail store, and then just kind of another angle of the store. So I tried to match the angles that you saw in those photos to what they look like today, and I did take those photos today.
And just to provide context too, we were on a pretty strict budget when opening this business. So that's an easy way to put it, as a strict budget. So a lot of the drywall, a lot of the mudding, all the painting, we did a lot of that work ourselves with some help from some very close friends that we were able to pay off in pizza and donuts. So it really was quite the labor of love, and we put a lot of sweat equity into it, and in a very short period of time. So Ian mentioned it in his introduction, but to review the timescale again, we did our first escape room in October 2015, and in June 2016 we opened our doors. So that was business conceptualization through everything, and was a very short period of time to.
It's an extremely fast turnaround.
Yeah.
So here's just some different photos of us kind of in the process of doing the work. So this is the retail area where we're sitting. There's that brick wall that sold me. And then we get into, this is the first room that we opened. This is our Sherlock Holmes room. And this is the room that we did actually purchase a design from, and then we only ended up using about 30% of that actual design. And it's funny, this room looks so simple to me compared to the rooms that we're designing now, but we still have people talk to us about this room as just, they remember it so well. And then this was our Jesse James room. This is the second room we designed, and this was my first full-on escape room design that I created myself. So this is just some fun photos of different teams that we have and our leaderboards. We actually keep track of the top 13 fastest teams to escape each of the rooms, which is a fun thing for us. A lot of escape rooms do that, but we take Polaroids of all of our teams. If you make it up on the board, your team photo goes alongside your team name along with the time that it took you to get out. And if you ever get knocked off of the board, you go onto the Wall of Fame, Hall of Shame, and you're welcome to take your Polaroid photo home. We have easily over 1,000 at this point that we're just holding on to right now, but they're fun to look at. These are the two rooms that we currently have right now. So the one on the left is a part of our medieval breakout room. And this is actually the wizard's room of that game. It's a beautiful game. It's very, very fun to play. And there's a lot of cool, unique details that we put into that. And then I didn't have a great photo of our Lost Temple room. I apologize. That room is dark. We actually give you flashlights when you go inside that room, so it's hard to get good photos of it. Also, we kind of didn't want to give away too much. So, and then this is actually a little bit of the process of us building the room that we're currently designing right now, the Steampunk Express. And this used to be, for anybody that did the room, the Agents of Influence game. So you can see where there used to be walls that we've knocked down. We are mudding, and we are doing all the construction in this room ourselves. In fact, today was a huge day for the construction. It looks massively different today than it looks in even photos from yesterday.
It's a great segue to a question from Allison Riggs. Hi, Allison. She asks, do you both have prior experience with construction, or was this your first time really getting into that kind of work?
Neither of us have experience in construction. So my father has been doing construction my entire life. And that, I think, helped a lot for me feeling confident that I could figure it out. Plus, Chris and I both took shop class in high school. So yay to our shop class teachers. They'd be so proud of us. It is funny. You can kind of tell in certain aspects that we don't have a construction background, but in a way it benefits us because we do have to build things a little more robust than you typically would for just a general house. And because our skills might be seen as rudimentary, sometimes the stuff that we create is more robust. And over the years, we've become a lot better at the construction we're doing. So framing out a wall, hanging drywall, not a problem now.
Yeah, we both have a big DIY attitude and background, and I think that really helps. But no prior understanding.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then I'm looking at some of the other things here. So it looks like we've got quite a few people who've done rooms here. Andrew, thank you. I'm glad that you're joining. I realized that you're not Jenna, it's Andrew. Andrew's actually one of our employees. He's super anxious to come back to work. He's essentially the fourth employee of our employees, 4 of 5, and he's one of the ones that's not here yet. But soon, very soon, Andrew. So that was the little slideshow we put together of just some of the different photos, and you can see that it has been quite the process for us to get to where we are. And then we were going to talk a little bit about managing the business, especially in terms of, I guess this kind of goes back to the COVID thing. So sorry guys, I'm sort of backtracking here. The financial aspect. I know a lot of folks are really concerned about small businesses and how being closed is impacting their financials. Chris and I are lucky in the aspect that from even before we opened this business, we wanted to make sure that we could go 3 months without receiving a penny and still not be facing the business closing. So we almost in a weird way have been prepared for disaster, and we're really grateful for that. We want to give that advice to anybody who's thinking of starting a business or already has started a business. It's hard to put that money away. It's hard to save it and not spend it on updates and new things and growing. But if you can, it really benefits you when the unforeseen happens.
Not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but I, as a mathematician, like numbers, and I found a personal fascination with personal finance that led me to a program called YNAB, which is an acronym for You Need a Budget. Mm-hmm. And at the time that I learned the program, they had 4 rules, and one of them was called Save for a Rainy Day. You never know when a rainy day is going to occur, but when it happens, you want to have activities to do. So you don't necessarily know when something dangerous or bad is going to happen, but you know that it will happen. So save and prepare for it so that you can always pay for it. And that really put us into a stronger financial position coming into COVID.
Yeah, we're really grateful to be in that spot. We did receive some government funds, so that is helpful as well. But we're not a business that is facing the potential of closing, even if we can't open next weekend. And that means a lot to us because it means we really have the time to be cautious as well as the time to make sure we do it right. Yeah. So we're excited to be open, but we're going to make sure we're open at the right time. And then, oh, awesome. It looks like a couple people use YNAB. So that's exciting.
Sweet.
That's great.
That's great. And it's not just my family. That's awesome.
Or mine. We tell everybody we run into about YNAB. Yeah. We're pretty passionate about it. What do you want to talk about?
So I think one of the other aspects that we have to our business has been board games and Tinker Toys. So I think this really hasn't been the most fluid presentation, but that's fine. So One of the things that we have too is we sell board games and tinker puzzles. The idea behind that was so that we wanted to provide alternative options for people to truly engage in human experiences with each other, or to actually sit down and use their minds, anything that got them to put their devices away. So that's really what we've started to try and foster here between the escape rooms, the board games, and the tinker puzzles. So we have amassed a pretty decent board game library that we have, and then we do a lot of like on-demand board game special order stuff too. So.
Yeah. So let's watch the video that you put together. It's just a couple minutes, like 2. And then I'm going to show everybody a couple of things that we're working on downstairs. And then we're going to go take a look at the room as it currently looks as of today.
So while she's pulling up that video, there is a point where it pops up and it says like a sneak peek of the new room. Pretty much everything after that like writing on the screen pops up is stuff that is either of the actual room itself or of the props and the design and stuff that Hannah's been working on to try to get into that room.
Right. You ready?
Yeah, hopefully this comes across okay with the audio and everything, but if not, we'll make it available.
This is a metal sensor prop. It currently has 6 metal sensors attached to it. Essentially, the way this prop works is that when each of the metal sensors is either touched just by a metal object or touched sequentially by a metal object, it will trigger this prop, which will then also release a mag lock, which is holding a compartment, a box, a door, something shut.
All right. Hopefully everybody was able to see that. Can we get like a comment of yes or no? I'm gonna assume that we did. Looks good. Yes, awesome. Okay, great. So I actually just realized we can't go look at the workshop because our Wi-Fi gets really bad down there.
Yeah,
but let's go take a look at the new room.
Okay.
All right, follow me. So the 2 rooms that we currently have right now, our medieval breakout is a really fun room. That room is going to have a like 35% success rate. And essentially the concept with that room is that you are thieves who are locked in the medieval dungeon. And you're going to have to figure out how to escape by replacing the family crests that belong to the great King Alfred. He's extremely upset because he believes you're the ones that stole them. And if you don't replace them in time, you're going to be beheaded.
And then our Lost Temple room is, like I said, a little bit based on Indiana Jones, but essentially you're trying to get the magical golden idol and find treasure to bring back to Professor Jones, who's way too old these days to be going on adventures himself, so he sent you on the trip. And then our Steampunk Express, the idea behind that room is that you all are going to be taking a train. You don't know where or why you're on the train, but you'll be aboard a steampunk train. And gosh, I can't really give too much away about this room because, like I said, the storyline of it is pretty crucial throughout the entire play of the game. So if I tell you too much too soon, it's going to give away an aspect of the game that you'll come across during the middle of it.
So the other thing I'll add too is my job with the company is actually be unique. Hannah does a lot of the day-to-day, but I think the coolest part of what I get to do is I get to beta test all the new rooms that she creates to give her quicker feedback on what we really like in our experiences. So seeing this room is something that I normally don't get to do either, which is kind of cool.
How's it look so far from where I'm standing?
Like it's stripes.
All right, here we go, turning around. So here is the new room thus far. We have done striping on the walls. We just finished laying the floors today. We're going to come around the corner here. And yes, it's a mess. We're still in the middle of construction. But here is the overall design so far for the new room. As you can see, we to the ceilings. We put in this really nice archway. But we have curved the ceilings to make it look and feel like a train. We built a wall, and in fact, we steampunk room in its current state. All the puzzles and props are still downstairs waiting to be installed.
We were running into a couple of issues with audio video in there.
Oh shoot, hold on.
But it looks like, I mean, it's coming through on my end right now.
Okay. We are in a really big basement. We've got 3,400 square feet down here. So our Wi-Fi, though it's really, really good, it's the best you can get in Durango, it's still Durango Wi-Fi. Okay. So that's at about 40 minutes. We weren't sure if this was going to go for 40 or 45 minutes. We'd love to take any questions that people have. If there's anything you wanted us to share or explain that we haven't answered thus far, we'd be more than happy to go over those things.
And for questions for everybody who's watching, there is a little Q&A button at the bottom. If you put your questions in there, it's a little bit easier for us to manage on our end than taking them straight out of chat. So, yeah. I'll start with a question since I don't have to type it out. There was a video posted by Destin from Smarter Every Day. I don't know if you guys have seen his YouTube channel, specifically on like tips and tricks to get out of escape rooms. And yeah, I don't know. Have you watched videos like that? Do you think you're, you know, like programming your escape rooms so that they're resistant to those tips and tricks? Like, what do you think?
Well, so escape rooms are really fun in the aspect that you can kind of treat them like a board game or a strategy game. The more you do them, the better you get at them because you start learning those tricks and those methods. So without those things, honestly, the first time you do in an escape room, if you escaped, great job. It took us several to escape our first few. And that's one thing I love about them. The more you do them, the better you get at them, and you can start doing harder and harder ones. As for tips and tricks videos, we do see them. We even have our own that you can find on our website for our rooms specifically. I think they're really helpful. I think they're great. We don't per se try and build our rooms to get around those tricks, but we do build our rooms in such a way that we try and cut out the ability for you to skip over steps.
Yeah, so when I think about tips and tricks, I think too more of like my personal experiences with games. with escape games. I've done somewhere between 20 and 30, and that's including the ones that I get to test for her, which is kind of fun. And when you do enough of them, you start to find trends of what you don't like and what you do like in an experience. And the things that always stand out the most are always when a game designer comes up with something that you haven't seen before or haven't encountered before, but they're able to guide you to it and through it in a way where it gives you this really cool feeling. That's like the most important part. So when Hanna designs her rooms, she always tries to figure out something that is outside of her comfort zone that she hasn't done before to give that wow factor to something, but also to provide some other familiar items in the designs of the rooms that give people what we like to call quick wins, which kind of helps keep people motivated through a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We also build our rooms to be non-linear. So if you have never done an escape room before, or if you haven't done one with us, don't expect there to be a point A leads to point B, because chances are you need to start with point F, which is going to take you to point Q. But before you get to that, you actually need to do step A. It's super convoluted and they crisscross. Also, I love it when we get groups, especially groups from out of town who are familiar with other escape rooms, and they may or may not find another room in the game. They all of a sudden think, do we need to take everything with us to the next space? Do we leave it here? Do we not come back to the first room? Chances are in our games, if you're going from room A to room B and you're not sealed off from room A, you should definitely keep going back and forth.
Awesome, thank you. We do have a couple questions. Kathy asks, can you talk about the approaches you've noticed that different ages typically use as they
navigate? Oh yeah, that's a good question. Thanks, Mom. So different ages make different approaches to escape rooms for sure. We see our youngest age that we allow in is 8 years old, and then it goes up from there. And depending on the group, you kind of anticipate how they're going to go about the room. So our birthday party groups, they're loud, they're crazy, they go through everything all at once. There's no method to the madness until they kind of realize that they're not getting anything done. And then they sort of start trying to process that. Our teenagers are really funny because they tend to have an attitude of like, we're not into this, we don't want to have fun with this. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And then they get into the room, we get them hyped up about the story, they get into the room and all of a sudden they're really engaged with it. We also take away everybody's cell phones, so that helps a lot. And then our adults, the adults are funny. What I love about kids is kids think out of the box. So, you know, you'll find a kid who in a pirate room will come across a sword and he'll be like, I think we need to use this as a key. And it doesn't look anything like your conventional key, but they actually had it right because they tried it. Whereas a lot of times you'll see adults who unfortunately aren't as willing to think outside of the box. They'll get hung up on one thing having to be the way they think it is, and it's not that way. So my biggest piece of advice I can give in regards to that to adults, be a little bit more willing to be creative. Additionally, if there's a person in the room that has an idea of how to solve a puzzle that hasn't been solved yet that is different than yours, be extremely open to trying that idea because you never know what we're going to throw in there. In fact, my aim is to design puzzles that are not going to be solved in the conventional way you would think you're going to solve them.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. Think as divergent as possible. The groups that do and don't get stuck up on something has to be one way, and that will have ideas but also listen to the other ideas always are the most successful. Mm-hmm. I will say one thing that I think is really interesting is we historically we've seen some older demographics. I'm terrible with ages, but like
60
plus groups struggle in the escape rooms. But in the design we just took down, the Agents of Influence, there was a lot of vintage elements in there. For example, rotary phones, viewfinders, you know, just vinyl records that were like decorating the room, Morse code, tappers. And as soon as those grandparents got into that space and kids were like, wait, what is this? Why does this phone look all weird? This isn't a phone. grandparents were like, oh, let me show you what's up, let's figure this out. And like it kind of made grandparents look to these kids like superstars and like these wizards that knew some crazy old crap. That was just really cool.
That was really sweet. We have another from Allison. Where do you guys get your props?
Well,
I will leave that to you.
So the electronic props, like the guts of the mag lock puzzles. So the metal sensor prop that we showed in that video, we order those from a couple different places. They do actually come from China, but there are some incredible designers in China who makes those. We call them guts because we design the stuff around them to fit the theme of the room, so you would never actually see or know how those electronic props work. And escape rooms kind of originated in China or Japan. It's a little up in the air about which one was first. But that's why there are so many great companies there that make those items, and we get them shipped in and then create our puzzles around the interior mechanics essentially. As for the decor, I have gone as far as St. Louis to raid thrift shops and antique stores looking for all the right materials. If we can't find it in a thrift store, an antique store, we'll start looking online. If it's something you just can't buy, we make it ourselves.
Yeah, so to add to that, she gets the guts from, you know, providers, but then how we implement those is completely designed in her head and figured out by the team. For example, the Al Capone room that we used to have, if anybody did that, for those of you that didn't, there was this beer tap puzzle where you found like a clue that showed you how to pull these beer taps in a certain order that connected to like a metal contact sensor that triggered a mag lock that opened a secret door built into a bookshelf. And it was like, how do you come up with that? It's like that's where I think Hanna is incredibly brilliant with how she implements the guts that she gets from these other providers.
We also are really lucky in the aspect that the walls of our escape rooms are actually false walls. You can crawl around behind them. So that makes it really doable and easy for us to hide the electronics that otherwise would be really challenging to embed into elements and features. It would look a lot more bulky if we didn't have that ability. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, we do have another from Emma.
Hi,
She
Emma.
said that the electrical, I think she was talking about the electrical stuff, was her favorite part of running agents. And I agree, that's the one that I did. It was awesome. But Hanna, which room has been your favorite to create? And Chris, which room was your favorite to pilot out that Hanna did?
Almost every new room we open becomes my new favorite room. Just because I try and push myself beyond the limits of what my last room was and really try and deliver something that you guys haven't seen from me yet. But if I had to pick an all-time favorite, it's going to be the Speakeasy of Al Capone. And luckily, that room is still running. It's just not running at Conundrum Escape Rooms. So if you ever happen to find yourself in Cave Springs, Arkansas, Experience Escape Rooms has Al Capone and Jesse James still running. They bought those rooms from us.
Yeah. So my favorite room to pilot, you probably know this one too. I think one of my favorite all-time rooms was Jesse James, but I actually helped build that one a lot more. That was before we figured out like, hey, if you design this with a team, I don't know, there's debate on whether it was me trying to get out of construction work or me trying to test more rooms for myself. But I do like that we can give more value back in the rooms with me piloting them because I know what quality we look for. I think my favorite one to go through for the first time was probably Agents of Influence. It was such a fun room, and we finished it. I think it maybe took me and my team like 30 minutes. I usually grab some. No, okay. There's debate about what my time actually was. But I work in fintech, so financial tech, credit card payments. So I have a lot of pretty quick-witted people that I work with. Those are the people that typically make up my team. So we got through it pretty quickly, but I remember like going through it and just feeling like, wow, there were so many elements of that game that I had never seen or experienced in an escape room. The story was really cool and really immersive. And just the vintage elements that connected, like this, you had to look through this viewfinder that showed you where to place these different objects, which had RFID tags in them that unlocked this compartment somewhere else. And it was like, to tie all that together was just so cool.
That room also is actually not, just because I tore it down last week, it's not gone forever. The Experience Escape Rooms, that escape room in Cave Spring, Arkansas. Wow, Cave Spring, Arkansas. They also purchased that room from us, and it's still here. All the parts for it are still here at Conundrum. They should be coming in the next month or so to pick it up. But you know, again, if you missed your opportunity to do that room, it's not gone forever. But that room was with us for 2 years, and that's just because it was such a fantastic room. It was right in the middle of being, you know, on the easier side versus hard side. It had about a 50% success rate, and it was one of the best rooms for our family groups to do, because there were a lot of things in there where the young kids, they could just poke around and find all this stuff that they needed to find. But then when it came to some of those more vintage items like a tape recorder and the viewfinder, you know, you'd get the mom or dad or even grandma and grandpa who for the first part of the game felt like they weren't involved, and then all of a sudden they were the ones with the knowledge to solve that puzzle. Yeah, that was a good one.
Any predictions on what the success rate will be of the new room?
Yeah, so we try and make sure we always have a range in room difficulty. The Lost Temple room has a 65% success rate. We despise using the word easy because that gives people the impression they can escape. But that is our hard room, so it's got a 60% success rate. Steampunk is going to be our harder room, hopefully around 45% success rate. And then the Medieval Breakout is our hardest room at a 35% breakout. So we rate them from hard, harder to hardest.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, in the time that we have left, I know you guys you said you're reopening next weekend?
Yeah, we should be open next weekend. The new room will not be open next weekend. I'm actually, since it's going to be our 4-year anniversary on June 10th in terms of how long Conundrum's been open, the new room, the Steampunk Express, is going to be opening June 10th. And other than that, the other 2 rooms, Lost Temple and Medieval Breakout, they're opening next weekend. And we're being really cautious about how we have groups in here for the time being. But we also have all of our board games available, so you can come in and shop some retail. You can even shop our retail online. So if you wanted to buy board games from us, we have all the games available online for delivery, curbside pickup, whatever you want.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What do you recommend for if I wanted to come in and do an escape room? What do you think about social distancing for all of that? What do you guys recommend?
So if some of the requirements that we're being asked to follow are to encourage our guests to maybe come with people they're currently living with or family members. If you do want to put together a small group of friends, especially if you know you're starting to do the backyard hangouts with those people, that's okay as well. We don't allow our groups to be larger than 8, and that is for the Medieval Breakout room. So we're reducing all of our group sizes to 6. So there'll be 6 people max in a group plus 1 employee. That keeps us under the 10 people max. So we're good there. In terms of social distancing, you are going to be required to wear a mask when you enter the business. And that's purely just for the fact that once you're in an escape room, you are basically left to your own devices in regards to keeping yourself socially distant from the other players that you're with. And so it's just best practice that everyone wears a mask. We are deeply disinfecting every single room between each game. So we're really putting in some pretty strenuous measures, in fact, more than we're being asked to put in. But we do have the approval that we're good to go. So.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds like you guys are doing the right stuff. I'm excited. I want to get my housemates in and try out the medieval one.
Yeah, you know, after being quarantined with your housemates, just come lock yourself in a room with them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So I think what we'll go ahead and do now, since we don't have any more questions, I'm going to promote everybody to panelists. And then if you're willing to turn on your video, a candid camera kind of thing, we'll go ahead and do like a quasi group photo with a screenshot here. But if you don't want that, okay,
Emma!
sweet. Then I don't know, just don't turn on your camera.
Yeah, Mitchell and Lori. Hey, Allison.
Oh, nice.
Mitchell, Lori,
Jenny. So so Mitchell Kilpatrick, just so everyone knows, that's Chris's whole family. There's Mom.
Kathy.
Yeah. Hi, Casey. Awesome.
Okay, sweet. All right, everybody, smile, get ready. Yeah. 3, 2, 1. Okay, cool.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here.
Thank you both. Really, this was so informative and so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, good job, Hannah and Chris. Awesome.
And thanks. If I may, the one thing everybody keeps asking and everybody wants to know, what can they do to help small businesses during this time? Of course, shop local, but for us specifically, if you wouldn't mind, just tell people about us. If you've done an escape room with us, share your experience and how much fun you had. People are starting to get stir crazy in their house. This is a great way to stimulate your brain to get out of the house, but still do it very safely. So you can really help us out by just kind of sharing with those, you know, that we're here and that we're getting ready to open and that we'd love to have them come do a room with us.
Hey, cool. Search frantically for the unmute button there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, if you guys want to hang out, you're welcome to chit chat for a while, but that's the end of the meeting.
Sure. Cool, we'll hang.
Yeah, we'll hang out. If anyone wants to just talk with us, we'll be here for a second.
I'm excited for the new room. It sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be, it's coming along really well. We finished up a couple of the designs for it today in terms of some of the puzzles, and Dennis, Emily, and myself are exceptionally excited.
Great.
Mitchell, I see your COVID cough is coming in strong, dude.
Oh, it's getting long and strong, baby. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Mitchell.
Yeah, hi, Kathy.
That was an awesome
How are you
tour.
doing?
Thanks, Ian, for putting that on. That was really cool.
Emma, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good. So Ian and Krista, just so y'all know, Emma used to work for Conundrum as well. She moved up to Denver, and I
Cool.
wish she wouldn't have.
There
But
you go.
Well, we're glad you're virtually able to join today.
Oh,
Yeah.
always.
Bye, guys. See you later. Good
bye.
job.
Good to see everyone.
Bye, guys. Good to see
Love
you.
you.
Love you too.
Thanks for joining, guys.
Yeah, bye.
All the
that's
family
so
members.
sweet. Your mom
Y'all
came.
take care.
Yeah. Oh, thanks.
I don't know who has better hair right now, you or me.
Look at this quad. It's
Hannah's hair
great.
is definitely better.
Chris cut the back of it for me like 2
did.
nights ago.
Nice.
Like,
It's getting gnarly.
getting gnarly, yeah. Ian and Kristen, thank you so much for letting us do this. I hope it met your expectations.
Absolutely, it did. This was so fun, and this is exactly what we want to provide people at this, time. Give them something different to think about and get excited about Conundrum opening up again. It's wonderful.
Good.
So thank you.
Yeah, Yeah, you guys rocked it. We're always, I mean, we're doing this without oftentimes having seen the hosts present. So it's always like, how's this going to go? But you guys crushed it. This was
Yeah.
great.
You did awesome.
Yeah, like I guess Hannah has high expectations for stuff, so I can
Nothing wrong with that.